Hi, I'm Eric Polson with the Casby Real Estate Group. I'm here today to meet with Chris Polson, the Utah County Assessor, regarding a new form that's showing up called the Residential Property Declaration Form. There's a lot of confusion regarding how our property taxes could be affected by this form. So I decided to meet with Chris and see if we could get some clarity and dispel some rumors regarding the implementation of the form. So join us inside. Let's see what Chris has to say. So I'm here with Chris Polson, our Utah County Assessor. And Chris, thank you for taking time for a meeting with me today to discuss this Residential Property Declaration Form that residents will be coming across, I think soon, right?
Soon.
Okay. Well, first let me emphasize that Chris and I are not related. Chris spells his name P-O-U-L-S-O-N, and the last part of my name is S-E-N. I don't think that my ancestors got the memo on how to spell our name correctly, but be that as it may, here we are. I mentioned, Chris, in my video introduction that we're meeting to try to get some accurate information about this form that's going to be coming about, because I discovered the form about maybe 5 days ago. And as I asked individuals in the real estate industry and in the lending industry and the title companies, there was a lot of confusion, and some didn't even know about it. So that gave me concern. So that's why I wanted to come and meet with you, so that we can make sure that our clients and the public in general have the right information. So let's kind of dig into it regarding the form. Now, I thought this was a new form. Can you give us some background on that?
It is a new form. There's been some variations of the form. They've been primarily used in Washington County and Summit County, places where a lot of people have second homes. In Utah County, there's not that many second homes. We have some up in Sundance and some of those areas, but if you're outside the canyon, most properties are primary residences. So that's probably why people aren't familiar with the form around in this area.
But evidently, I guess the state wants this form out there to all the counties. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, there's some legislation that passed, and it was primarily concerned with income tax. People were trying to claim a primary residence here in Utah when they were actually claiming on their IRS forms that they were not a resident of Utah. And so the Senate, one of the senators ran a bill to try to reconcile that. And part of that bill was for the county assessors to start mailing out information, requesting information. The other part of that is the part we're talking about today, and that's the declaration. That is, whenever a property transfers from one owner to another, this form is now required.
And so this is why I had some clients that were seeing this form at their settlement.
Right.
Because there was a transfer of title. And so on that form, I believe, and I have the form right here, which we will post and everyone will be able to see, it says that they have 5 business days after settlement to return the form to the assessor's office. Is that correct?
Right, that's in statute, so that's where the 5 days come from.
And who is responsible for filling that form in and returning it?
It's actually the new property owner. They're responsible for it. Title companies, realtors, even our office can assist, but it's actually in the statute as the owner of the property, the new owner, is responsible for the information.
Okay, and that's very important, because you don't want to take this form home,
right,
and forget, oh, I should have returned that. So what would happen if they didn't return it?
If they don't return it, the statute actually states that they will not receive this residential exemption. There are appeal rights, but it's the difference between, it's almost a 50% increase in your taxes.
That's what I wanted to know, because you know, that could be concerning. If all of a sudden, what would their bill suddenly go up, or would they get a notification, you know, warning them that, hey, you know, this has happened?
It would probably, the bill would go up. We do let them know during the Board of Equalization period if it happened prior to August. or even prior to June, they would see that on the notice that we send out. But it is by statute pretty much defined as something that happens automatically.
So if they could come in for an appeal, is there a chance that they can get that fixed for that year, or is it going to have to wait until the following year?
I believe during the appeal process they can get that adjusted
Okay.
on the declaration. So,
Because I can see where some people, I mean, you know how we all are.
right, right.
There could be a problem there.
Well,
But
there's so many papers you're signing and closing anyways.
I know it. As a matter of fact, my sister just refinanced her home. And I told her about this form. I said, "Did you sign this form?" And she said, "I don't think so."
Right.
And she had a transfer of title. So we called her title company and they said, "Oh, you don't need that." So I'm like, "Oh, gee, you know, what are we going to do?" But anyway, that's something she'll have to address. But you mentioned, well, what is the requirement for primary residence? How many days?
You have to be in your, well, not the owner, but someone has to occupy that as their primary residence for at least 183 days out of the year. So
Okay.
it doesn't necessarily have to be the owner. They can have someone, they can be renting as an investment property as someone who's using it as their primary residence. Other options are, you know, family members, anyone who's actually utilizing that property as their primary residence.
So that is surprising to me because I thought the owner would be penalized for not being in their home.
And there are situations where, well, I shouldn't say situations. Other states, that is a requirement.
That is.
In Utah, it's not.
Okay, that's very important to realize because we have a lot of people in Utah where, you know, they could have a military assignment, a temporary job transfer, just for maybe 6-7 months.
Right.
But you also have a large population of people in the LDS Church that go out for, you know, a year, 3 years on mission assignments. So I know that's going to be a question, and that's really good to hear that they'll be okay, right?
Yeah, they will be okay because they're still claiming this one property as their residence, even though they're out of the country. They're
So-
still allowed the one in Utah.
Okay, so there could be a problem if there's another property then. They really can only claim the one.
Yeah,
right?
the code only allows for one primary residential exemption.
Okay. So we've already talked about what happens at title transfer and receiving this form. So I think we also want to go a little deeper into how it's going to affect other people. Chris, when will most people see this form?
The declaration is only utilized when there is a transfer in property ownership. So that's the only requirement for the declaration.
Okay, so it's really only going to be people that have gone through the buying of a home.
Right,
So for everyone else, they're not going to see it.
right. So you're talking about probably 5% of the population that will be required to do this.
Okay, so there is no cross-checking of records, voter registration.
There's a second process that we're going through right now. So you have the declaration, which is every time a property transfers hands, this declaration is required. During the initial implementation of this, the state has required us to go through our records and determine if a property address does not match up with a mailing address, that we need to take a second look at that. So there's a separate process going on to reconcile those properties. In Utah County, we're looking at about 22,000 properties out of 200,000 properties where this condition exists that will be we'll actually be initiating that process. It's not the owner that's required to.
Okay.
So we'll identify that group and we will send something to them in the mail saying we need your responses on this questionnaire.
Okay, so that's the way you're going to try to get clarification on what's really going on with this property.
Right. And that's a one-time event.
Okay.
The declaration that we're talking about here, that's an ongoing event every time property transfers.
And I think that, again, that is some misinformation that's out there in that there are people that believe that everyone is going to receive this form.
Right.
But we see now that that's not the case. That's not the case, and that's very important to understand. So you're going to be kind of going back to look at records to try to catch those properties that didn't report, I guess, right? Properly.
Well, there's a condition that exists that triggers it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't qualify. The property may qualify.
Right.
We're just doing an audit to ensure that the properties that have certain anomalies actually do qualify for the residential exemption they're receiving.
Okay. So if you could take 3 important things, I know it might be redundant, but 3 important things that everyone should know about this.
It's very important that if you're purchasing a piece of property and it is receiving a residential exemption, you need to follow through and submit this document. It's called the declaration. This is a new law, a new requirement, and it says you're supposed to do it within 5 days. The second thing is if you receive a document from the county asking about a residential exemption, and you're probably only going to receive this during the year of 2020, but if you do receive it, please respond to it. If the residential exemption is taken away in that process, it can be very costly because it is a full year that you won't be receiving the residential exemption, even if you qualify. The statute makes it very specific that no response actually takes away your appeal rights.
Wow.
So if you do respond, but even if the inaccurate information, you can still appeal it, but you have to respond to get that. The third item that's most important is this is not going to affect the tax rate. The tax rate is going to be the same. What it does is only the individual properties that are in question, it fluctuates because of the exemption.
Correct.
And
right.
So that exemption is a 45% exemption, which is very significant. So it is quite important that people actually respond to this, that do receive them.
That's a great summary, and I got to tell you, I've learned some things I didn't know, even after our first conversation we had a few days ago. So I'm really hopeful that everyone will take a look at what we've got in this video, and importantly, share it with your Utah family members and friends so that they can also see what's going on and understand what this forum is all about. We covered a lot of ground in a short period of time, so I thank you again for meeting and appreciate your time. Again, remember, this is important for everyone. Thanks for watching.